Hi, everyone. Welcome to Journey 23. Today I'm joined by Spencer Boyle and excited to have Spencer on here. So, we actually started communicating over Twitter a couple weeks back, and Spencer's going to be helping me out with some social media stuff. And as we got talking and completely random, it turned out that, he likes a lot of the things that I like, and specifically mental health and, kind of on similar ish paths. So, I was really excited to hear that and just, kind of the universe, I guess saying that this was meant to be. But anyways, how you doing today, Spencer?
I'm doing good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've been excited about it, thinking about it a lot. And I guess just to start off here, can you just tell people a little bit about yourself? Like, where you grew up, what you're doing now, kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I'll kind of go over like what I do now, and then I can start the kind of long story of how that all worked out, I think. So I am a freelance photo and video creator based out of Southern Indiana. Um, I grew up in a town. I live in a town called Evansville, and I grew up in a city that technically is called Mount Vernon. They're like this close to each other. I lived closer to like the actual city limits of Evansville, but my address was in Mount Vernon. So it was like, that's where I had to go to school and stuff, even though it was like a 25-minute drive versus like a 10-minute drive. It's silly. Um, yeah. So like I said, I do freelance photo and video creation. And that's kind of the easiest answer when people ask me. So I'm really into photography, and I do my own photography and take photos for businesses for their social media, and same thing with videos.
Cool, awesome. And I'm curious how you got into that. Like, was it always, an interest since you were young? Like, is it something that your parents did or friends? Like, where were you introduced to, I guess, photography and video editing and yeah, just kind of your journey with that.
Yeah, so I have like since I was a little kid wanted to create things. Like I was really interested in like comics, and like I loved Pokemon and kind of like I guess nerdy stuff you could say. And I always wanted to draw those things. Like I always wanted to draw like my favorite Pokemon or my favorite character from a show. And I can't draw. I can't draw to save my life. I tried, I practiced, I followed tutorials. I got like all of the books, like how to draw manga, how to draw this and that. I was like, I just can't do it. It doesn't make sense to me how you draw these weird lines and then it's this person, or this item. And it always frustrated me because I couldn't figure it out. Like I just couldn't do it. And when I was a kid, I was like, this is the only form of art there is. There's nothing else. You draw or you paint or you make nothing and you're a failure. And as I got older, I started to learn, well, that's not really true. And I think about it now a lot. Like looking back, my parents took photos of everything. I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 1993, so like cameras were finally like easily accessible to everyone in the world, and my parents took photos of everything. And as I've grown up, I learned my dad did photography beyond just like taking pictures of the family. So he worked for a company, and they did all kinds of intramural sports. So
Okay.
they had like softball, volleyball, basketball, and he was really involved with all of that. So like he would coach or play, and eventually the company was buying him camera gear to take photos of these things for the company. And I've actually like inherited all of that gear now. Like I can't use a lot of it with my cameras without tons of adapters and stuff, but it's all super cool to have. Um, so I kind of started seeing that more, and they videoed everything too, because home video cameras were a huge thing in the 90s. They were like this big, and
Yeah.
they used a full-size VHS tape, but the same way, like he would video any sports I did. Like Christmas morning was always videoed. um, I skateboarded a lot, so he would film that if I did like contests or just like took a day and went out to the skate park. And so like all of my childhood was documented, I think, by not me, by my parents.
Yeah.
And to kind of skip way forward and get to like why I do like the exact kind of work I do now was the same thing. And I got interested in working with cameras after I learned about video editing and creating online content, because that kind of came from the gaming world, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit too. Uh, but so I wanted to learn more about using an actual camera. In college, I took a film photography class and I learned like the basics. I learned, what all the settings are on a camera, why those matter, and how to compose a shot, get the shot, and then actually be able to develop the photo from film. But that's not really the best. Let me rephrase that. That's not really the easiest way to do it anymore,
Yeah.
because we have digital cameras, or we have even like my phone takes amazing photos. So I started wanting to learn more about how to do that digitally and editing photos and videos and being able to document things. Whenever we bought our house that we live in now, I started a YouTube channel, and I bought my camera that I use now for everything, and started doing vlogs of that process of like us buying a house for the first time, doing small renovations. Like we ripped up all the carpet, we redid a bathroom, all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to have that as a document. And whether people watched it or not, it was like, it'd be cool if they did. But if not, like I can go back and I have all of that video footage of what this house looked like before we moved in. And like I can refer to that. And it's really cool to be able to see it and kind of see where I've grown and what I've learned about cameras from then and editing from then.
No, that's super cool. And it actually touches on a really, I think, important point, and something that actually helped me get over, even like the fear of recording myself and putting things out and stuff like that. And it really did start. I mean, I mention it all the time, but I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. And it was, him talking about that idea of, like you get to document your life and show your kids or grandkids or, like now because it's all digitized, it can go on essentially forever. Right. And
Yeah.
down of like your great grandkids could see, what you were like. And, that was kind of, I think, the mental block that I had was, well, what if nobody watches it? If it only gets 2 views or whatever it might be, I'm going to feel stupid. Like, why am I even doing it? And then realizing of, oh, if I actually do it for myself and set it up in a way where it doesn't matter how many people actually watch it, I'm winning no matter what, right? It's worth it no matter what. And so I think that's huge and such a good point for a lot of people. And it doesn't have to be just, documenting their life or anything like that, but in everything that they do, a lot of times, bringing it more internal instead of those external factors.
Right.
One of the other things that I'm curious about, and you touched on, is you said you used to put, art in this box. You would draw things and that was it. And there was no other art. I'm curious if you remember, was there a specific, like moment in your life or, photograph or something like that that changed your outlook on that? Or was that more of a gradual process just as you grew up?
It's kind of both, really. It was gradual as I grew up and just kind of like, learned more about the world and how there's like things aren't always in such a small box, even though it might seem like it when you're like 10 years old and you just want to draw Pikachu.
Yeah.
But in high school, I got really involved in theater. So I did all of like the lighting and sound. I built sets and got like super involved in the technical side of theatrical productions. And I kind of started to see like, so we take this wood, we cut it, we build a wall, we paint the wall, we put that on stage, people act in front of it. Like that's a very simplified version of that, but that's kind of the same process of like you draw this weird line and then you draw this line and eventually you have a face. And it's like maybe that's not the only way to do things. Like that's not the only creative process that there is out there. And then as I got involved with theater, I started to see actors, and I could see, in high school, maybe not as much until you kind of get older with it. Maybe not as much of like people getting really into character and like seeing that that is their form of expression. And then around that same time, I was really interested in music, and I got involved playing like music in bands and stuff. And it's, you have to write lyrics, you have to write guitar parts, you have to write drums, you have to write bass. Depending on the bands you're in, you could have orchestral and all kinds of stuff. And then all of that comes together into one final product. And it's like, okay, so that's another form of expression. That's art. And to kind of get onto like the topic of the gaming culture of things, like video games are art. And what kind of got me interested in the video aspect of making content for the internet, because I didn't have like great internet where I lived. My parents live kind of in like the country, I guess you could say. And like even to this day in 2021, their top internet speed is 2 megabits per second. So there was no such thing as uploading a video to the internet where I lived, or like downloading a video from the internet. Like it would take me a month.
Yeah.
And I found a website and a series called Red versus Blue.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of it. It looks like. So that's from a company called Rooster Teeth. And if you guys don't know what it is, basically they would take the game Halo Combat Evolved, would use the characters in Halo, so like their actual in-game character, and then record dialogue for them and make it a show based in their favorite video game. And now that's gone on to be a multi-million-dollar production company whose like 18th anniversary is today. So, and it's like, that's what I was seeing when I was younger, was those things. And I kind of thought about it. I was like, that's really cool. How do you do that? And then from there, working in theater, getting interested in audio and lighting, and then growing up watching all of these gaming channels grow and get bigger, and just seeing like, so these people are doing basically the same thing that someone does on television, just on a smaller scale. Okay, well, how can anyone do that? And then it's just from there, kind of digging around on the internet and learning. And I got really lucky that my best friend went to college to be a video editor. So he graduated, moved back to our hometown, had a job at a news station, and we were hanging out. We were like, start a YouTube channel? It's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. So we started doing Let's Plays together. And through those, he would sit down with me and say, okay, so this is the basics of video editing. This is how you cut footage. This is how you tell a story using this footage. And from there, I learned the basics with him and have just kind of dove head first ever since then. If I don't know how to do something now, I Google it, and there's probably a tutorial. And if there's not a tutorial, I just goof around with it until it works. It may not be the technical way to do it, but did it work? Sure. And I'm happy with it. That's what matters.
And honestly, I think that that's something that's missing from a lot of people, of just being willing to go and figure it out. Right. And I think, I don't know where it comes from. It might come from, the school system now, where there is a right answer. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's all that you're looking for, is that right answer, the right way to do it. And I need to look up the very specific answer from the specific source that's given to me. And there's no like, well, go figure it out, or it's okay if it's not perfect, or it's not, quote unquote, the right way to do it. It's also really interesting. I see a lot of parallels with another guest that I had on, Trevor J, where, just this idea that what you thought you wanted to do, there was some sort of mental block or some sort of block for it. And so you found a way to work around that and still, do something that you love. And for him, it was, making beer. He loved craft beer. So he actually went to college here to become a brewmaster. And through that process, realized that he hated making beer. but he loved like craft beer and everything about it, the community, everything. And so he became a beer rep and absolutely loves it. Right. And it's that, even, call it that self-awareness, of you talking about, I wanted to be an artist and I realized I could not draw at all.
Yeah.
Right. And for him, like, he wanted to be in craft beer. He realized that he hated making craft beer, but finding something around it, and whether that's your actual, abilities that stop you from it, or when you get there, you realize that that specific role or whatever you want to do isn't what you thought it was, or you actually don't like it as much as you thought.
Right. I actually, I kind of ran into that in college.
Okay.
So like I was saying, in in high school, I got really involved in technical theater, and I was extremely lucky that the high school I went to was like the only high school in the area that taught technical theater. All the other schools, they just had like the custodian or another adult would come in and would like point a light at things,
Yeah.
and they would go, okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Where we had an actual teacher who he was also the choir director, and he had done technical theater as a career for his entire life. Like he toured, he worked on cruise ships, all kinds of stuff. And he said, why don't we teach this as a class?
Yeah.
So I took that for 3 years of high school. That was an elective I took for 3 years. And outside of school, we got to work with the local union. And he would take like that I would go on field trips in school to work and I would get paid for it. And it was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But when I got out of high school, I was like, man, what do I want to do now? And my parents, love them to death, wanted me to go to college. That was the only thing. That to them, that was the only option. You go to college or you're nothing kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's a whole nother topic, but it's a very generational thing. You know what I mean? Like my parents are older than most people's my age. So to them, that was the end all be all. So we finally talked about it. And I was like, if I'm going to go to school, I at least want to study something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So I ended up studying theater for a while, and I started seeing people in the department who had graduated and were looking for jobs, and they would move every 6 months when their contract would end, or they would be on tour and they would wake up in like a different city every night. And I was like, man, that sounds awful. I don't want to do that at all. So that's when I kind of started looking at, well, what else can I do? Like I've always wanted to create or be in some form of like entertainment, to do something to entertain people or to make them, like think or make them feel a certain way. Well, how can I do that if I'm not on a stage?
Yeah.
Or working behind a stage?
Yeah.
And that's, I was like, well, I could make videos online. I could, I can take all of this lighting knowledge I have now, and I can use that in videos. All of this audio knowledge I have, I can use that in streaming or to start a podcast, things like that. So it's taking those skills that you have, that knowledge you have and your interests, and just kind of like, where can I move it?
Yeah, for sure. And, I think there's also the part in there about balancing it with practicality, right? Of like, you have to be able to pay the bills. You have to be able to eat and feed yourself. And, that is a balance that I've been walking, the last just over a year now, where, I want to be doing all these different things. I have all these different side projects, the podcast, trying to start little businesses, stuff like that. But also needing to pay the bills. And so
right.
I get a job that I don't necessarily love, doing something that I, could, when I could be doing something else, but it allows me the flexibility. Right. And so during the daytimes, I get to work on my projects and connect with people and, do the things that I want to be doing. And then in the evenings, I go and I bartend or I serve. And, is that where I thought I would be? No, not at all. Right. But it's necessary right now. And I think that it plays really cool into your story, though, where, practicality means different things to different people. And like for me, for instance, I could try to go and get more of a corporate job that pays better and, is more stable and everything like that. But it doesn't give me the flexibility that I need. And for me, so that's practical. It is the bare minimum to pay my bills and feed myself and make sure that, I can fulfill my needs. And that's it. And I value the freedom over, the stability and the safety. And it was really cool, and I think this is one of the moments where I connected with you the most in our initial conversation is you told me the story about, how you were working a job and, making the most money that you'd ever made in your life. And you realized, or you didn't realize, but you decided to take the jump to pursue what you're passionate about, what you actually want to be doing, instead of, that quote unquote safety and stability. And I'm wondering if you just take us through that really quick, the rundown, but more importantly, how that came about and what made you make that decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, I worked in retail from the time I was 18 until I was 24, 25, something like that.
Yeah.
Basically, like the summer I graduated high school, I got a part-time job at an office supply store, making minimum wage and like 10% commission on sales if the whole store hit like a certain goal. So basically we didn't make commission very often. It was
Yeah.
like it was not designed to make money. But I was 18 years old. I didn't really have any bills. It was more like this is spending money and to buy my books for school. And from there, I worked there for a couple of years and like barely got a raise after multiple years and ended up being pretty much a manager without getting paid to be one.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, if you don't promote me to a manager, I'm going to find a new job. And they said, okay, we'll talk to the district manager about bumping you up. And they kept, giving me the runaround. I finally left. I finally said, okay, well, I have a new job. Here's my 2-week notice. I left there and went to work for Best Buy Mobile, which doesn't actually exist anymore. It was like in like a side shoot of Best Buy.
Yeah.
So these were stores that were typically in like a mall or anchored with a bigger something, mostly
Yeah.
malls. And all we did was sell phones and tablets and like phone accessories. So when smartwatches got big, we got into those, but like we didn't do TVs, computers, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that was actually, if I like to look at a job that I had that wasn't for myself, that was my favorite job I ever had. I was a super cool boss, super cool coworkers. It was really laid back and we got to have fun as long as we got our job done. But being retail, hours would regularly just become nothing.
Yeah.
Especially after the holidays. So, Black Friday would come and we'd be working, part-timers would be working 40 plus hours a week. And then Christmas would come, you're still doing it. Mid-January comes, you're down to like 10 hours a week. And I was like, I got bills and 10 hours a week on $12 an hour ain't gonna cover those bills, man.
Yeah.
So I had to leave there. I didn't want to, but I had to. So I kind of just took the first job I could get and worked at a utility company in customer service for like 2 months. And then got a job working for a telecommunications company in the US. So I was working at a retail store for them. And that was like 50 plus hours a week, sometimes 6 days a week. You worked every night, every weekend, no questions asked. But it was just so much more money than I'd ever made.
Yeah.
But like I said, I worked every weekend, no questions asked. And every other job I had from there, like you could request to be like, hey, I have a birthday party for my nephew this Saturday or like 2 Saturdays from now. I need to be off that day. And they'd be like, cool, we'll work it in your schedule. This was not that case. This was all seniority based. So you had to try to get someone to switch with you.
Gotcha.
Well, the only person that could do that worked Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because he'd worked for the company for 20 some odd years, like almost as long as I'd been alive. He's not switching with you no matter what.
Yeah.
So I worked there for a little over a year, I think, year and a half maybe. And I just hated it.
Yeah.
Like I hated going to work. The idea of going in sucked. Like, and I was just like, what's the point? Like, why do we do this?
Yeah.
Like, what I get up, go to work 5 to 6 days a week just to come home and go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
cool, I'm making all this money. What do I do with it?
Yeah.
I can't go like on a trip. I can't go buy things to experience with it. So it was just like, well, what's the point in this? So I started looking for new jobs, as one does. And I was at that point, I was like, I'm going to be picky about it because I was comfortable. I knew I would have my bills paid, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So I started looking and found a job at a casino where I live, doing their audio and video work. So it was the audio video content administrator was my long-winded name of the job. So in Indiana, the law was you can't gamble on land. You had to
Oh,
gamble on water.
interesting.
So all of our casinos were big boats. It was such a dumb law. Like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
it's 2 feet off the land. What does it
Yeah.
matter? Well, that law changed. So they decided to build a brand new building and open it on land. And they had like big video walls. They had TVs like every so many feet. And so they needed somebody to maintain all that, which makes sense. So I went for it and ended up getting the job. And I was like, great, this is, more where I want to be. And I was working 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, real easy schedule. Like I was out the door at 5:01.
Yeah.
Like I was done. It didn't end up being like exactly the kind of like job that I expected it to be. It was very more like technical focused on like keeping the TVs running and all this stuff. And I was like, well, this feels like a job that's more IT based when I was working in advertising.
Yeah.
But I did get to do like some photo and video work there. I started learning After Effects through them, which is still like a crazy program to me. Like that program blows my mind sometimes. I'm still definitely the weakest with After Effects, but it was, I got to start learning the basics there, and that was cool. And during that time, I started streaming on Twitch. So I would come home, and in the evenings, 3 or 4 nights a week, I would stream. I'd play video games on Twitch. Just usually whatever I wanted to play. And it was kind of like, I had done that before, but I'd never really learned how to do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Like used to, whenever I started, it was the same time that I was doing like a Let's Play channel with my friend. I would just turn on the stream and I was like, okay, people will show up. That is extremely wrong.
Yeah.
I could not be more wrong. So I started learning the ins and outs of it. Like, how do you get people to come watch? How do you grow? How do you actually put on a production versus I turned on a webcam and played, Call of Duty for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So I got really involved with that and kind of found a huge love for it. And, eventually started making a little bit of money from it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot, but, I stream a couple hours a night, 3 or 4 days a week, make them, a few $100 a month extra. Cool. Buys video games for me.
For something that you're already going to be doing, right?
Right. Yeah. Like I'm doing it anyway. Like this is great.
Yeah.
So I started watching more and more of Twitch too in my free time. Like at work, that's kind of like what brought me back in is I had a lot of downtime at that job and I had an extra screen and I would just throw up a stream on the side while I did, my spreadsheets or whatever for the day. And that's what kind of brought me back to it of I could be doing that too. And as I was watching those, I saw people doing streams for charities. They would stream for like 12 hours and they would take donations for whatever charity they were interested in. And they would have incentives for you to donate. Like they would eat like a gross jelly bean. They would have milestones to like shave their heads, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, that seems really cool.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I emailed the just like generic reach out to us page of a charity called Hope for the Day. So they are a charity based out of Chicago, and they do proactive and active suicide prevention education.
Okay.
So they don't do like crisis training, but they'll talk about how you can help someone who might be struggling or why it's important to talk about mental health. They would go on Warped Tour and go to concerts and speak on stage to the crowds and stuff. And their CEO emailed me back. It was like, dude, that sounds sweet. What do you need? And we started talking back and forth. And we decided I would just do like a day. I would take 12 hours on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I would stream. And we would raise money for him that day. So I was off every Saturday because I worked Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And I would get calls some weekends like, hey, this thing isn't working. Can you help us? And I would just like remotely connect to it from my laptop, fix it real fast, and I'd be done. So before that weekend, I very specifically told everyone who could possibly contact me, like, I am not reachable from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I don't care what happens. You need to call the IT department because they have someone on call. they had 4 or 5 people in the department, and they had people there on call all the time, where I was just me. I was by myself.
Yeah.
No one else in the advertising department knew what I was doing. They didn't know how to operate that stuff. So I was like, normally I don't mind, but this day, this is what, like, I told them, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I can't answer my phone while I'm doing this. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll call IT, whatever. So I'm doing the stream, and like 2 or 3 hours in, I am just getting berated by phone calls from people on like the casino floor, to my boss, to his boss. And I finally answered the phone. I was like, what? Like, what do you need?
Yeah.
Like, is the casino on fire? Because if it is, you need to call the fire department, not me, because that's the only reason you could possibly be contacting me, right? Like a disaster. And they said, yeah, so none of the TVs work. I was like, okay, call IT. Like, I'm busy. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you want me to do. So we go back and forth on it, and I go back in, and I find out that what happened was the bill didn't get paid for the satellite television service.
Yeah.
Guess who paid the satellite bill?
Who's that?
The IT department, who I told them to call. So I was mad. I was like, why did you do this? And my direct boss went out of town. So his boss decided, well, we're going to have a meeting, and you have to work Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. from now on.
Gotcha.
I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Because I probably started making about half as much money as I was at my sales job before to do this.
Yeah.
And I even told him that I was like, I took a pay cut to have better hours and do what I was interested in. But if I go to that schedule, I'm working the same thing I was, and I should just go back there and make way more money, right?
Yeah.
Why am I taking a step down and getting nowhere ahead? Like, I'm taking steps backwards for you.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of was just like, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So I just left the meeting. I said, okay, I'll talk to my boss when he gets back.
Yeah.
So he came back, and I explained the situation, and he kind of was just like, well, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, from here, consider this my 2-week resignation. If we can come to an agreement, we'll figure something out that like I can work remotely, but there are going to be times where I can't just drop everything for this all the time.
Yeah.
Because they also wanted to have me like work on call, but not be on call.
Yeah.
So like they wouldn't give me a phone. They wouldn't pay me to be on call. If I worked outside of work hours, I had to leave early on Friday. So it's like, so you're not going to pay me overtime. Like, I'm getting nothing out of this. So he asked again, like a week later, he's like, are you sure? Like, is this what you want to do? Like, you don't have a job lined up? Nothing. I was like, yeah, I'm 20, 25 years old at the time. Like, I don't have kids, and I'm not going backwards because I'm not going to miss family events, friends gathering. Like, there's no point for me for that. Like, my career is not my life.
Yeah.
I don't live to work. And he was very much someone who did.
Gotcha.
Like, that job was like his life. He would drop anything for that. And that's fine. Like, that's what makes you happy. Go for it. That's awesome. But that does not make me happy.
Yeah.
So he asked again at that weak point, and I said, I'm sure, again, if we come to an understanding, I would love to work something out, because I don't want to leave. I like my job, but I got to do what's best for me, not what's best for the company. And his boss never talked to me again.
Yeah.
I still haven't spoke to her to this day, except for the one time they called me to fix something, and I gave them my freelance rate. They didn't call me back after that.
And so this is, if I'm correct, like, this is kind of where you, because we talked about this when we had our initial phone call of, you kind of went to your wife and didn't really know where to go from that point. And she kind of said, like, we're set up in a place like where we're stable financially, right? And so why don't you just pursue what you actually want to do? And that's the actual freelance work, right? Is that kind of how that happened?
Yeah. So that was like when I told everybody, I was like, yeah, I'm quitting my job in 2 weeks. They're like, oh, do you have a new job? I went, nope. And they're like, what the hell is wrong with you? I was like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'll figure it out. I've kind of like, lived by the the motto of, fuck it, we'll do it live most of my life. Like that's how I figure stuff out. That's what I thrive under is like a pressure. I'm not very good at like bullet planning out stuff. That
Yeah.
stresses me out more than just like
Like
willy-nilly winging it,
no,
like who cares, whatever. um but yeah, so it was like we don't have kids, we don't really plan to have kids, so if you're gonna go for it, do it now. Like you're probably not gonna do it when you're 40,
yeah,
but you're gonna do it when you're 25.
yeah,
So now's the time to do it. um so I left and focused a lot on streaming. I
yeah.
pretty much streamed full time on Twitch for a while.
And
um
sorry, Spencer, just to interject, I guess, too, just in case some people don't know what Twitch is, right? And so Twitch is essentially a streaming service centered predominantly around video games, where you essentially live stream yourself playing video games, chatting, interacting with the community, correct?
Yeah, so I always kind of explain it as the opposite of YouTube. So like YouTube has a live streaming platform, and it's growing. It's growing a lot. They're doing a lot of great things. But most people, when you say YouTube, they think, okay, somebody filmed a video, edited it, and upload it, and I watch it, whenever I want to. It's available 24/7.
Yeah,
Where Twitch is all live based. So it's it's mostly around gaming, or that's kind of how it started. Now you can do a lot more stuff on it. There's art, there's um, IRL streaming. People will go out in the street and live stream themselves, kind of like a vlog, but it's
yeah,
unedited, it's unfiltered. But the biggest majority of it still is gaming focused.
yeah,
So that was kind of a big focus. Is I play games. But the focus on most streams isn't the game itself, it's the broadcaster.
yeah,
So you are the entertainment, or why people should show up to your stream, unless you're, playing at a professional esports level where you're the best in the game, and then people will watch for the gameplay.
yeah,
I'm not very good at video games for the most part.
yeah,
Like I'm okay at most of them. I can, beat video games and hold my own like in online games, but for the most part, it was more me being
hmm,
trying to be entertaining and talk to people. And a lot of why I started streaming on Twitch was I watched other streams, and it was a good place to go if I was having like a rough day.
interesting.
So
Okay,
like I in 2016 I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety and depression.
okay,
And that is something that runs in my family. So it's not like I'm the only person that's ever dealt with it, obviously, in my family. Um, and some of those outlets for me was like playing video games myself, listening to music, because I'm really into like hardcore music and metalcore, and a lot of the bands talk about that kind of stuff. They talk about struggles, or they make positive songs that sound angry,
yeah,
but it's very aggressive, and there's a lot of emotion in it, and
yeah,
that's what draws me to it, is how like just raw all of it feels versus pop music. Like pop music isn't bad, but it's not as emotional. It doesn't provoke as much emotion as someone yelling at you does. um but I started watching streams and would get involved with these communities that people were making in their Twitch chat. And you would show up and they would say, like, "Hey man, how's it going? How's your day?" Or you told me you're having this problem at work. Did you solve that?
yeah,
Or you're having some relationship trouble. How's that going? Or whatever it was, these people would remember that, like myself or others, told them about stuff, and then they would kind of have conversations with you, and it was just like hanging out with friends playing video games without being in the same room. And that was like a big outlet to kind of deal with that stuff, and just have like a place to go where you could talk to people who understood what you were talking about.
yeah.
And I
Well,
went, why the hell don't I do that?
yeah. Well, I just really quickly here to jump in. It's really interesting because I think from the outside looking in, a lot of people don't understand that, right? They don't understand the sense of community, of how much connection and support you can feel, from people that you have never actually met in real life. People from all around the world, all around the country, and it's always a blanket statement. I feel that screens are bad, social media is bad, the internet's bad, whatever it is. And why don't we connect more in person, right? We're getting away from this in person. And I'm not saying that in person is bad either. And I'm not saying that, only online, but, there's the idea that you can't connect with people on a deeper emotional level through online communities is, in my opinion, just wrong, right? And sometimes
Right.
that is the only place that you can feel that connection and feel that support. And it was interesting when you said earlier, you went, when you were having a bad day, that was one of the only places that you gravitated towards, right? You gravitated towards going online, going on Twitch when you were having a bad day. um, and it just shows how much of an impact you can actually have through these online connections. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because it's something that I've thought about a lot recently, especially with all the noise of, like, the social dilemma and everything of bad. Everything is bad. Your phone's bad, social media is bad, and it's it's not an all or nothing game. It's not black or white, right? There are pockets in everything where you can be supported and you cannot be supported, where it can be, good for you and bad for you. But anyway, so you start seeing these streams, and they're talking about more deeper things that aren't super surface level, and you ask yourself, why can't you do that?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of like, you nailed it there. Like, there's so much positivity to have on these platforms, but just like anything else, that doesn't generate interest to people. People gravitate to drama and negativity. And that's what gets, like, as cheesy as it sounds, that's what gets the clicks, like there's not a whole lot of articles out there that's like Twitch streamer had fun on his stream and people in chat were nice. Like, cool, that wasn't a fun read, but like, this streamer said, this slur, or chat was attacking this person, like that generates people to click on it.
Yeah.
So
And
people just don't see those things as often unless you're involved in that world. You know what I mean?
for sure. And it's so interesting where a lot of times I think to myself, well, why aren't they asking themselves, like, going a level deeper of what's actually going on with those people? It's not the platform. I had a really interesting conversation with one of my friends just this last weekend here, and he started to talking about social media and the negativity and everything like that, and I just kind of said, well, I mean, and kind of putting it on social media, and I went, well, social media isn't really anything, right? People put all the content on social media. It's people that are attacking other people. It's people that are using racial slurs or homophobic slurs or whatever it might be. It's the people. It's not the platform. They don't go out
Right.
and put a
Yeah.
whole bunch of negative things on there, hurtful things. That is shared by people, and that is what people gravitate towards. And so for me, I always ask, why is that? Why do people gravitate towards that? Why do those get all of the clicks and the views, and why do those go viral instead of, like, a Twitch stream really helps one of its members? People don't find that interesting, and that's, for me, more of a people issue and not a platform issue.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think that someone at Twitch went, it'd be fun today. Let's just make stuff bad. Let's
Yeah.
put bad stuff on our website. Like, no website's doing that. I think these sites can make people feel more comfortable to do those things because they're not face to face. Like, most people won't confront someone directly to their face, but they will say mean things to them in a Facebook comment.
Yeah.
Because there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
So there are negatives to these things, and too many screens or too much screen time can be a bad thing, but it's not only bad. Like you said, I through my Twitch stream, I've made some of the best friends I have in the world, and had multiple of them fly in or drive in and go to my wedding. Like,
Crazy.
I never would have met those people if I didn't stream on Twitch. And now I talk to them every single day about everything. So it's like, there are plenty of good people on the internet that you can meet. Like, you're not the only good person, or like your city isn't the only city with good people in it, So there are connections to be made. It's just you have to find the right ones.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes more than just looking at the surface.
And I think that's an important point too of, yes, being behind a screen or, leaving a comment, it allows people to, say things that, they wouldn't necessarily say in real life. And at the same time, that is still in them in real life.
Oh
There's
yeah.
something there, and whether that's frustration, whether that's insecurities that are coming up that they, won't take on in real life. They're looking for that outlet, but that's still in them. It's not, Facebook didn't turn them into this bad person because it allowed
Yeah.
them to leave comments, right?
Right. That's just where they happen to put that out there to let everyone know, like this is who they are, their way of thinking. That's
Yeah.
just happens to be where they wrote it. Before Facebook, it might have been on MySpace.
Yeah.
Before MySpace, it might have been on an AOL message board or a chat room.
Yeah.
Before that, they wrote it in their journal. Like it's somewhere. It always is, like that. These did not make bad people.
No, it's so true. And so, you know, saying that you were diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and sorry, it was anxiety and depression, right?
Yeah.
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 And because I know that you actually started incorporating some mental health into your streams itself. And I guess my question is one. I think the biggest one is just what made you decide to do that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not necessarily mental health in general is becoming a larger topic, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still not talked about a ton, right? And then I
Yeah.
feel I have never been on Twitch myself, so I can't say this for a fact, but I imagine a lot of streams are not geared towards mental health around going deeper and really, kind of, for lack of a better term, going into the shit with people. So what made you decide to start doing that? Was it, you knew how you feel at times, and so you wanted to give other people an outlet and like something that you wish that you had, or where was that coming from?
Yeah, that was a lot of it. Because I found that in Twitch communities myself, as well as like when I was younger, before I like went to doctors and they actually said, yeah, this is why you feel that way. Like I didn't know that like the the symptoms and things I was having, like, oh, that's because you have an anxiety disorder, not just because like you're mad. It's like you're extra mad because you're anxious and you don't know how to express that. And when you can't figure out how to express it, you just get angry. So I found that like when I was younger in the hardcore community in music, because bands would get on stage and they would talk about that stuff. They'd be like, I wrote this song because I was depressed. If you're depressed, listen to these lyrics and like you probably will resonate with it. Um, and from there it was the same kind of thing. Like I found that in Twitch communities of people would like, even the streamers would be like, I'm having a shitty day, guys. Like today sucks.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna hang out and talk, or I'm gonna play, Zelda in the background and I'm just gonna vent and you have to listen to me. Like,
Yeah.
and if you have a thought on something, like, or you're having a bad day too, just like, speak up. Just be like, hey, my day sucks too. And like that's so much of, to me, like the stigma around mental health is people don't want to talk about it. And I've never understood why. Like it even has it in the word health. If
Yeah.
I break my arm, I tell people I broke my arm. If people are diagnosed with a physical disease of some kinds, like cancer, diabetes, whatever it is, there's so much stuff for that, and there's so many people talk about it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you say, I have mental health problems, like I have anxiety or depression, or someone is bipolar, um, that immediately gets a negative stigma around it and people will look at that person differently.
Yeah.
But, you know, you see someone who's been, let's say, diagnosed with cancer, everyone rallies around them. Maybe you didn't talk to them for 4 years and that person comes out of the woodwork to rally around you and say, hey, like you're going to beat this. But when you say, oh, I found out why I have days where I literally can't get out of my bed, it's because I have depression, they go, well, stop being sad.
Yeah.
And it's like, what what the fuck did you just say to me? Like, what do you mean? Like, stop, like, don't have a broken arm anymore. That's how that sounds to me. You know what I mean? Like, don't be sick. Okay, didn't think about that one. Like,
Yeah.
thanks, man.
Yeah.
If it was that easy, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, just people talking about it is huge.
For sure.
And whether it's like describing what they're going through or just literally saying, like, hey, if you are having problems today, like, this is a cool place to talk about it. Like, bring it up in chat, or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can like DM myself or one of the moderators in the chat.
Yeah.
And they can talk to you if you need resources. We have those available. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that people don't just talk about it like they do anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good comparison. The other comparison that I use, like the doctor one's a good one, like the broken arm, right? It's like, yeah, I could wish this for arm. If I could wish this arm away, I would decide it to be gone, right? I
Yeah.
don't decide to stay in my bed the entire day. It's not a choice, right? I don't want to be here. The other
Right.
one for me is, when I talk about like seeing a therapist, and there's a lot of still stigma around that. And I almost, the analogy that I use is a personal trainer, right? Nobody
Mhm.
looks down on you because you're using a personal trainer. Nobody goes, oh, you can't figure out health for yourself. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, just be healthy, right?
Yeah.
Just be jacked. Just get good at the gym.
Just
right?
pick up heavy weights. Like,
Yeah. And for me, it's the same thing talking about therapy and, going to a therapist, seeing a therapist of, it doesn't necessarily mean that something has to be quote unquote wrong with you. It's again health. You have your physical health, you have your mental health. Sometimes you just want to improve that. Sometimes you just want to work through it. Sometimes there are deeper things that are going on, and then it moves more into that almost like doctor broken arm thing of like, oh, this is what, like, just like you said, this is why I react the way that I react. It's not because something. It's not that you're broken. It's just that, oh, you have like a condition that this is what happens.
right.
And for me, when I first started talking about mental health and diving into it, really similar to what you were talking about there was finding a sense of community. And for me, it was feeling alone. And I feel that mental health still has a ton of shame,
Mhm.
associated with it. And that's why, I talk about shame a lot is I felt so ashamed because I thought I was the only one, right? I thought I was the only one that struggled with this, that nobody else, thought this way or had these feelings or had these struggles. And it was almost that compounding effect of I felt ashamed because I was struggling with this. And then I didn't see anybody else struggling with it or talking about it. So then I had more shame because I was the only one, which made that problem worse, which just, it was a self fulfilling prophecy. And,
Right.
went in cycles and cycles. And it was such a freeing moment when people started to share. And I was put in environments where, oh, other people have these same feelings as I do. And the weight that I felt lifted off of my shoulders was incredible because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I think, just so many people go through that. And whenever you break that down and you look at it, and it's like, there's like what? There's trillions of people in the world, or billions of people in the world, however many people live in the
Yeah.
world. There's literally no way I'm the only person. But
Yes.
when you're in that, like, those moments of like the lower times where you're feeling it harder, or like you are more depressed that day, your brain is not thinking logically in any way. So you see it as, I'm the only person that's going through it. And that could literally just be because you opened Facebook and the first 5 posts you saw weren't about someone being depressed.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's enough to trick you into thinking that. So that's kind of like, why I want to talk about it, because
Yeah.
I know how that is. Like, I can even sit down, like, whenever I'm having, say, like a panic attack, I'm sitting there dealing with it, and I kind of like bring myself back down. I'm like, I'm so stupid. Like, why did I get so worked up over something so small? No one would be that upset. And then even like reading statistics and having all of this information about mental health, when I've researched it, it's like that doesn't come to the front of my mind, even though I know all of these other people have anxiety. Like, people who I'm friends with, like people in my family, like people I know in person have these same things. Like, we've talked about it before, that they're on they're taking a certain medication, or this grounding technique works for them. And I'm like, I know for a fact that this person also has it,
Yeah.
but my brain will not tell me that in that moment. So like, that's why I try to talk about it. And I think sometimes I will talk about it like to a fault or too much. And people are like, dude, just shut up. We get it. But then, you know, I like, that's like the only thing I talk about on Facebook is like local news and sharing stuff about like mental health. And it could be like, hey, you're going to be okay. Or like 1 in 5 people are diagnosed with depression. It's okay if you have it. And I think sometimes like this probably annoys people, but then I'll have one person comment on and be like, yo, like, thank you so much for sharing this today. Like, I was dealing with this today, and I'm so glad that, somebody shared this and just said like, yo, it's okay. Like, I understand what you're going through. Or, you know, again, like 1 in 5 people, we'll break that down. There's 5 people in a room. One of them probably has it. So it's like, it's a way to kind of like just tell people like other people deal with this shit, man. Like, and it's part of life.
Yeah. And, I think that for me, it's all about the energy that you're coming at it with. Right. And for me, like putting positivity out is never wrong. Right.
Right.
And even the way that you're talking about it, of, just like, hey, just so you know, like, very accepting tone, right? It's a very accepting and like an educational tone. Because what I find from some people and some accounts, which I don't necessarily agree with, is it's a very almost attacking or angry tone when they're putting stuff like that out, right? And almost an accusatory tone,
Mm-hmm.
or like a shame based thing of like, instead of just, oh, 1 in 5 people struggle with depression, it's okay if you do. Instead, it's 1 in 5 people struggle with depression. So you never know what kind of day that person's having. So be nice to everyone, right? And
Mm-hmm.
even though, their heart may be in the right place, I think it's a very different energy, and one where, yeah, I just think it should be a lot more open and a lot more accepting, and more of just, hey, here's this, like, you're not alone. And if this doesn't apply to you, then that's cool too, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, forcing it on people. And I think for me, that's where it gets annoying, as opposed to, again, just putting positivity out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's just like little things like that, can make such a difference to someone, or just to get people talking about it and have discussions, have open, real discussions with it. And that's why if somebody asks me like, what is that like? I try to describe it as best I can. Like, this is what, a bad day looks like, compared to like maybe your bad day is you got a flat tire because you don't have a mental illness, where my bad day is I can't get up today. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. There's no reason.
Yeah.
So just like, that's why like I am just very open about it and talking to people about it. Is again, it seems weird to me that people don't talk about it. I
Yeah.
guess it's just because I've done it for so long. Like, I feel comfortable talking about these things. So
Yeah.
it's weird to me that other people don't, when it's
For sure.
a health condition, just like anything else.
For sure. And we're running out of time here, but I think an important piece in this conversation is, just from your personal experience, where have you, we talked about Twitch and finding communities like that, but where have you gone, or what do you tell people? Where should they start? If they want to start having these conversations, or are curious about it, or whatever it might be. Is it finding online community? Is it talking to your friends about it? What has worked for you, and where have you found those places? Or is it, start talking about it yourself, right? As kind of we have.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's starting on that journey?
There's definitely not a perfect answer, um, because everyone is different. Um, I think an easy ones are either finding online communities or talking to people that you really feel like a connection with, or that you really trust. So like if you have a really good friend, just bring it up to them. Say, hey, I don't really understand like what this is or why I'm feeling this way. I kind of just want to vent to you for a minute. Is that cool? So just like reaching out to people like that, maybe even your parents, because I didn't know that generalized anxiety disorder runs in my family until I was diagnosed with it. And I told my parents, and my dad was like, "Oh yeah, I have that too. Like I take a medication for it every day." I was like, "What the fuck, man? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't anybody tell me that?" Like, so that might be something that legitimately is genetic, and they just haven't told you before.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good way too. And if none of those things seem like a good option to you, like if you don't think there's a local community for you, or like your Facebook friends aren't good to vent to, you don't want to talk about it on Twitter, and you want to find like anonymous ways to do it. If you're a Reddit user, there's a subreddit for everything. There's a subreddit for anxiety. There's a subreddit for depression. There's a subreddit called anxiety depression for people who have both. So feel free to check those things out. Other than that, to give like a small plug, there's a nonprofit that I really like and that I work with a lot, and have really partnered with, like, together on Twitch, done a lot there too, called Heart Support. They were founded by the musician Jake Lures from August Burns Red. It's a metalcore band, if you guys don't know. And he would go on tour and people would come up to him at concerts and say, "Your lyrics really help me," or "Your music makes a difference in my life." And he went, "Well, why don't we do more with that?" And they have an anonymous forum that you can post on. You can make your name whatever you want it to be. So if you don't want it to be connected to you in any way, it's completely anonymous. And you can just post on there and just type away what you're feeling. And people will respond to you and just say, "Hey, I get it. Like, I went through this," or, thanks for, like, even just thanks for opening up, like encouragement. And that's what they do. So like that's a super good place to start if you don't know where to start, or you don't feel comfortable not being anonymous about it. Because I understand that it can feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders dealing with that, or that you're embarrassed because you're dealing with it. And if that's something you're going through, that's a really, really good way to start talking about it, is just anonymously on a forum like that, because people there have gone through it and they are going through it. Like they might have lived with it their whole life and know exactly what to say, or sometimes that's just, "You know what, man, that sucks. It's a
Yeah.
crappy day, but I've dealt with it for 28 years. The next day is going to be a better day." Like,
Yeah.
and it can be advice or just encouragement, and that's such a good way to start.
Yeah. And it's funny how sometimes that is just such a powerful thing of just hearing like, that's okay, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
don't need
huge.
to you don't need to fix it. You don't need to
Yeah,
change anything. There's not this 15-step program. It's just like,
that
yeah, man,
sucks.
like that sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
show Parks and Rec covered that really well in an
Oh, did it?
episode. Yeah, so one of the characters is pregnant, and her husband is a fixer.
Okay.
Everything that goes wrong, he's like, "I'll fix that for you."
Yeah.
Like, she's like, "I'm hungry." He's like, "I'm going to the store."
Yeah.
Or like, she'll say like something, and he won't just go, "That sucks." And finally, people tell him, "Just tell her that sucks." It's like,
Yeah.
"That sucks." And at the end of the episode, he does, and she looks at him and goes, "It really does suck." And it's like, that's so real sometimes. Like, people just need to be like, "That sucks, man." They'd be
Yeah.
like, "That does suck." And you just kind of have like that moment of connection of, yeah, this isn't great, but
Yeah.
it's
And
all
that's
right.
okay too. Yeah.
It's part of it. It's okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on. Before I let you go here, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or that we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about?
I think we really covered a lot of stuff, man. Like, that's kind of the basics, I guess, of what I do and try to do is
Cool.
and who I am.
Awesome. And so if people want to connect with you, where would be the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so if you're interested in photography, videography, video editing, being a freelancer or self-employed, whatever way you want to look at that, and kind of the mental health aspect behind that, you can go to my website. It's just Spencer, the letter S, and my last name Boyle, BOYLE.com. And that has all of my like social links on there. If you're interested in gaming, more specific stuff, or Twitch, I have separate accounts for that because those are kind of weird worlds to overlap sometimes. Like, I don't know how I would explain to some like marketing executives, like, yeah, my name is this because I play video games on the internet. And I also really want to edit your ad campaign, please.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can go on Twitter and it's just the letters MPI. So Mary Paul Isaac creates. That's kind of my Twitch and gaming name. So if you're interested in that stuff instead, you can follow me there. That's kind of more like goofy, personal, fun stuff, where the Spencer S. Boyle accounts that you'll find are going to be very business focused, and talking about being a freelancer, creating photos and videos as a career, and that kind of stuff. So whichever
Cool.
one of those is more appealing, if not both, feel free to follow me wherever.
Awesome. We'll put some of those in the notes too. And so the last question that I ask everybody who comes on is, what does this next phase in your journey look like? However you want to take that, personal, professional.
So, personal / professional, because they kind of overlap, being freelance. The two avenues that I'm really interested in trying to get more into is product work, product photography and videos, and real estate. Cool. Those things are really interesting to me, and I want to try to do more of that. And trying to get back into YouTube videos more around photo and video freelance stuff. So I really want to start making those videos, and I just have to figure out what I want to talk about in them. Cool. But yeah, those are kind of like the main things that I'm looking at right now. I'm trying to still work Twitch and gaming in there as much as I can, but there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much again for doing this. Looking forward to chatting more, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again, man. I appreciate it.